The World Health Organization estimates that each year approximately 1 million people take their own life. That's one death every 40 seconds. Experts predicted numbers would peak in 2020, but no one could have imagined the devastation brought on by COVID-19. During the coronavirus pandemic, you may experience anxiety, sadness, and loneliness. Existing mental health conditions, including severe anxiety and major depression, may worsen. If you're feeling hopeless, contemplating self-harm, or you're concerned about someone else, I'm here to tell you there is hope. A Mission for Michael is dedicated to helping clients achieve complete inner and outer transformation. Mission for Michael is the premier resource for intensive mental health treatment in Southern California. With an astonishing 2-to-1 client-to-staff ratio, each client in their facility receives individual care 24 hours a day, overseen by a team of all doctorate or master's level clinicians. With a focus on evidence-based treatment, along with personalized and compassionate care, they offer mental health treatment that can change lives. If you're suffering from mental illness or you're concerned about a loved one, go to amfmtreatment.com. Again, that's a mission for Michael, amfmtreatment.com, or call 866-581-4401. Again, that is 866-581-4401. As we're gradually moving back to opening schools and businesses and, of course, our in-person interactions, I want to remind you, this is all time with cold and flu season getting going. Staying hydrated is key to helping your body deal with the added stress and with the upcoming flu season. My regular fans have heard me talk about a product called Hydrolite for a long time now. It's an amazing rapid rehydration drink. It's a mix that, well, we're obsessed with here. I'm excited to announce they've just released Hydrolite Plus Immunity, just in time for cold and flu season. Hydrolite Plus Immunity starts with their fast-absorbing electrolytes and adds a host of immune-boosting ingredients. Each single-serve, easy-pour drink mix contains 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C and 300 milligrams of elderberry extract, creates what is hopefully immune-boosting formula that's high in antioxidants and zinc. Combining this with Hydrolite's 7 key electrolytes, it's a fantastic way to stay proactive and properly hydrated. Hydrolite Plus Immunity comes in convenient, easy-to-pour powder sticks that rapidly dissolve in water and make a great tasting drink that has 75% less sugar than your typical sports drink. It uses all natural flavors, and it is gluten-free, dairy-free, caffeine-free, non-GMO, and it is vegan. And you can find Hydrolite Plus by visiting hydrolite.com/Dr. Drew. Again, that's HYDRALYTE.com/DRDRW. And be sure to use our code Dr. Drew 25 at checkout for a special discount.
Hey, everyone. It's a dose of Dr. Drew.
Hey, everyone, indeed.
Oh, wait. I have to turn on your mic.
Good. Hey, everyone, indeed. Susan, we're using that camera right there. It's always a mystery.
Yeah, you're in the
there
front now. When you're going
Not this little one up over here, but
you'll
this one
know.
over here. All right.
It's going to be the Canon or this one.
Okay, fantastic.
We didn't plug that third one in today. Hopefully the sound will work and everything will be working.
Well, speaking of that, that's one of the reasons Smythe is back with us today. Her show yesterday was interrupted repeatedly, and we said, just come back. And she said, okay, I'll come back. I said, come back. That's great.
In the sky.
Yeah. So
Which, by the way, I've already told them to all just stay out of my show today.
No, what you said was, nobody mentioned spirits. And what's the first thing out of her mouth? so here we are. And I'm watching you guys on the restream, of course, as always. And there's a lot going on in the world of COVID, and that's what we want to kind of review today. And Kay, because Kay, essentially, what she, amongst her other skills, she takes people that do research and sort of processes their material. And I thought this would be a good idea to bring her in and have her help us make sure that people can understand what Dr. Yo and I get into. We go into the weeds a little bit, and we kind of get off on this stuff, and we don't realize sometimes that it may not be either interesting to other people or sensible to other people.
It's pretty dense stuff.
It's always interesting. It's just the layman's terms.
Is her on? I can barely hear Kay.
Yeah.
So just
yeah, she's on. She's
okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the layman's. It's the non-layman's
terms,
frankly.
Yes, my British.
That's better.
Emily Blunt voice.
So
that's better.
Reader.
We're going to talk about the fact. Thank you, Andrew. You popped on the thread here very quickly and pointed out to us something I did know, which is that Regeneron was approved today, which is great.
Oh, yay.
And if I get COVID, I want Regeneron right away, please. Thank you very much. It's a
What is
monoclonal
Regeneron?
antibody. It's essentially, we give convalescent plasma, which is all the good antibodies that somebody else has produced. This is a targeted antibody in very high concentrations. I think Regeneron is actually 3 different antibodies, if I remember right. Dr. Yo, who we're going to have here in just a second, can help me with that. Hi, Anthony. Hi, Casey. Hi, Tom Cigar. Hi, all you guys. Good to see you all.
Did anybody ever see Hobo Kelly?
Oh,
Anybody in my age group?
Well,
that
I did.
reminds me.
I
That
did.
reminds me of Hobo Kelly. Hi, I can see you, Susie. I can see you, Tommy.
No. Come on, let's see. One of the things I have superior to my wife is memory. I have
She
like
has,
a ridiculous memory.
I was a 4-year-old.
She would put on these huge glasses, huge, and go, Susie, I see you. Susie Sailor, there's a gift for you under your bed. You better look under your bed right now. And she just, kids would write in. She would just call out their name, looking
that's
through
so
these
cute.
essentially an oversized
Poor Dr.
novelty plastic glasses.
Poor Dr. Yo. He's getting a glazed look
All right,
on
let's
his
bring him
face.
in.
I
Dr.
can see him.
Yogendra, here he is.
Sorry.
Yo, Dr. Yo, with the doctor spelled out is where you can find him on all the social media. There you are. Dr. Ram Yogendra, he is an anesthesiologist, and he has been on his own come to the leading edge, particularly on the long hauler syndrome with Dr. Bruce Patterson. And he has been very kind enough to come in and talk to me repeatedly about, share ideas about not just the long haulers, but the cytokine storm and other novel interventions and ideas as this whole epidemic has evolved. Welcome, Ram.
Thank you, Dr. Drew, and thank you, Susan and Kay. It's good meeting you too.
Nice to meet you.
And
This
I
is
think he has
exciting.
sound. I think our people can hear today. So.
Great, everybody. Good panel, Tom Cigar says. So, Ram, Susan and I were trying to remember how we got involved with you. I can't remember. It's all so convoluted. Did we meet on social media or somebody put us together? What happened?
I think it was Andrew Ashkavili.
Was it Andrew Ashkavili?
I honestly had no idea. There was someone on social media. There are people that are trying to connect me with all sorts of people. I don't know who it was, but I think it was a couple of months ago. And it was just awesome to get on your show and get a chance to talk to you. Someone I grew up, as I mentioned before, I grew up watching you when I was in high school. So
Weird,
kind of
huh?
cool getting to talk medicine with you.
Very weird.
He doesn't remember Hobo Kelly.
So my daughter is texting me right now saying, thank you for helping us not get Lyme disease. They both went into the Appalachians this weekend. And
They came out of their
came back
COVID
with ticks.
quarantine and went into the
Came back with ticks. It's a perfect reminder, everybody, that you can hide out from COVID, but there are other infectious diseases waiting for you and other medical conditions that we should not forget. And of course, they're very focused on Lyme disease, but there's lots of other tick-borne illness that, especially out here, I've seen it all. Trust me. You practice mostly in the Southeast, right, Ram?
No, I'm up in the Northeast.
Northeast. So you see your share of Lyme, even though you're an anesthesiologist.
We do. We get a lot of them. Sometimes I do some critical care medicine, so we do see patients with history of Lyme, and you see the sequelae of that.
Yeah.
And obviously, having to manage them can be a little bit of a challenge.
So I'll tell you, we see out here a ton. Well, not a ton of. I've seen some Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is brutal.
What is that?
It's
These all sound horrifying, but it's like really cool stuff.
It's
so.
a tick-borne illness. It's called rickettsial disease. I think it's Rickettsia rickettsii, if I remember right, that does it. And it's part of the life cycle through the tick into the human, and in the human it causes this horrible reaction.
What kind of reaction?
And you can go into shock. You get a huge rash with these sort of lesions on your really vasculitic lesions on your palm. You get renal failure. You're just sick as hell. Just really high fevers and things. And it's a hard tick called Dermacentor americanus that transmits that. But the more common thing we see here in Southern California is typhus, endemic typhus. And my son had it. And it's interesting, Rob. Pediatricians, this is an interesting point. So pediatricians don't think about typhus. They just don't. I had to make the diagnosis in my son and convince them to test it. And lo and behold, he had typhus. But I am convinced that a significant percentage of the so-called Kawasaki syndrome, or what they call it, polyinflammatory syndrome, is actually typhus. Because I was looking at some of these kids, and their palm lesions they're not Kawasaki. That's a red palm. This is vasculitis. This is typhus, and of course they're not testing for it.
Why don't they test for it in children?
It's a risk. They're not trained to, and it's obscure illness. Or Rom, should they be thinking of it?
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm not a pediatrician, but if you have experience with it, unfortunately, there's a lot of, well, no, that's not possible, so we're not going to look into it mentality.
Right.
And I think that if, doctors like yourself, if you've seen it, we should test it. Again, typhus is not something that, I haven't come across that in my clinical practice. It's not something, I think maybe in medical school, there was probably some paragraph about it. We rarely get tested on it, which, again, we're talking about some of these parasitic infections. Parasitology in med school is only 6 weeks. It's a couple of questions on your USMLE.
You know what though? It depends where you train. So I trained at a old, huge county facility here in Southern California, which was like a MASH unit during the oh crap, not Nicaragua, but the country next to Nicaragua. I'm sorry for being like this. What?
Guatemala?
No, Panama. There was a civil war. There was a civil war going on in. Oh my God!
I'm looking at the map in my
Venezuela?
head.
No, Central
So we've
America, not South
got,
America.
like,
This
El
is
Salvador.
El Salvador. Thank you.
That's
That's white supremacy in real time. Everybody, El Salvador. I was treating lots of El Salvadorian refugees from the Civil War, and we saw. You know what the most common cause of seizure was at that hospital at the time? Cysticercosis. And that's something that's in the back of the textbooks. And we saw it literally every day.
What is it?
It's a tapeworm that gets into your brain. Tapeworm eggs. It's larva that gets into your brain.
I think you get that from, is that the one you get from pigs eating, or
eating pork.
I think it's
Tinea
Taenius solium, which I think is the pig.
Yeah.
But again, it was, and we saw ascaris, we saw Chinese liver flukes. We saw everything and haven't seen any of it since. But, that's why I told you ivermectin, we have Dr. Kelly Victory in here once in a while, and her husband and I went to medical school together, and ivermectin was something we used all the time. We used it, if I remember right, we used it for ascaris.
Yeah, it's still used very commonly in Central America and the Caribbean, out in South Asia for a lot of these parasitic infections, which is why when you're looking at some of the literature and the studies coming out, a lot of them are coming from Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Bangladesh, India. These doctors are so comfortable and familiar with using it.
So we've been it's interesting. We talked to Dr. Zelenko a couple of days ago, and his Zelenko method is sort of making the rounds a little bit amongst lay people are asking their doctors to prescribe it. I don't know if you're aware of this. Susan had a friend who said, "Hey, have you ever heard of this?" And we literally on her phone showed her the Zelenko method.
No, she was recommending it to people and it was working. And then she recommended it again. She said, I gave them this because it worked for my other friend. And it was the Zelenko protocol.
Although he emphasizes hydroxychloroquine in his method, as I read the literature.
Or quercetin.
Well, quercetin is very much in there, but he definitely says increase the zinc in somebody who's sick, and he seemed like if I read the literature right, I'm going to have a little more confidence in ivermectin. He seems still sold on hydroxychloroquine. What do you think?
Yeah, if you look at my tweets on Twitter, on some of the things on social media, I'm big on the ivermectin.
Yeah,
that's probably my number one. I actually have some friends I've written scripts for ivermectin, and within 24 or 48 hours, they've shown clinical improvements. So it's again, it's I think there was a confusion because when the FDA came out in April and they suggested do not use animal ivermectin and animal doses of ivermectin, and it's one of those things I'm reading going, duh, you don't use human dose or animal doses for humans for anything.
Right.
So I think there was a little bit of confusion and fear, but this is a drug most of my friends and people I've treated, within a day or two, they're able to get it at their local CVS or Walgreens. So it's not some obscure drug that no one knows about.
So Andrew Ashkashvili is taking responsibility for having put us together.
I told you it was him.
He saw you on Twitter and he thought this guy's interesting. You guys would be interested.
He's my new booker. I want to hire him. I need him. I'm not good at this stuff.
There's a really so Regeneron is now approved. Am I correct that it's 3 antibodies in Regeneron, and Lilly is 1?
I believe it's 2 for Regeneron. It's 2 monoclonal antibodies that work on the spike protein of the virus.
And Lilly, the Lilly product?
I think Lilly is 2, if I'm not mistaken. I have to go back and look. It's what they're calling its cocktail monoclonal antibodies.
So there's a really interesting buzz going around just right now on the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. I was telling Kay about it before we started. And the MMR seems, there's some very good literature that suggests there is an inverse relationship between the response to MMR and the probability of infection with COVID or severity of COVID. It's a pretty solid study. Now, you never know, but it's interesting. I then went into the literature and looked up MMR response in obese patients. Lo and behold, terrible. So obese people may not have the response, and that maybe that's the reason the obese people, or one of the reasons obese folks are getting so sick. And by the same token, an 80-year-old or a 70-year-old is decades away from the MMR. In fact, it's not even supposed to last into their 70s and 80s, which may be certainly a correlation.
I mean, that's what I was going to ask, because I had my MMR. So, again, born and raised in the UK, good old NHS. So I had
with that accent, I couldn't imagine how
really?
that's the case.
Did you
It's
not
weird.
tell?
Weird.
What gave it away?
So weird.
But no, I had my MMR. I actually remember getting it done because my mum had, I think, measles and mumps as well as a child and just gotten through them. And then I had to get another load of booster shots before I moved out here. And now it's like that sudden realization of like, if I want to go anywhere else, I have to now pay to get everything done.
Right.
So what you're saying is a lot of people who maybe would have had all of the vaccines as children or MMR as a child.
Well, there's two things. The kind of MMR we used to give before this 1965 or so was no good, number one, or at least doesn't last. And even if you got the good vaccines, it's not designed to last more than 50 years. Now, I just got revaccinated with MMR because we had a big old measles outbreak here in Southern California. I was actually measuring my patients' measles antibody levels to, sort of to make sure they were okay. And then I just started vaccinating everybody. I just said, well, why spend the money on the antibody test? Let's just vaccinate everyone.
Hence me.
And I vaccinated Susan. I vaccinated me. And the kids have had it. But that's really interesting that it may add some protection against
I think
COVID.
the housekeeper got one too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, okay, explain for the layman at home
Okay.
how that correlation plays out in reality, because that's what I'm fascinated
The
by.
reality, there is a study, here it is right here. MMR, see the study? This is out in MBio is the journal. Let's see if I can get the actual study up here. Yes, American Society for Microbiology, analysis of measles, mumps, rubella titers in recovered COVID-19 patients. There are actually 3 or 4 different studies, and they're all showing, again, this inverse relationship between response to the MMR and COVID severity, or even having it. Now, Casey, hang on a second, I just saw someone in my restream here. Casey Gates said he got MMR last year. Casey, did you have COVID? And it just was mild? Is that what you're telling us? Or that you didn't even get it? So Casey's saying he had, MMR update and then got mild COVID. So there's just anecdote here, but here's another little case.
That's so interesting, because I'm pretty sure I got COVID last February.
Have you been tested for antibody?
I was, but I think it was not a legit test. It was like my friend did it in like the living room.
With a cartridge?
Yeah.
Yeah, those aren't that accurate.
I mean, like he was saying that his girlfriend had even had like some had come up, some hadn't. But yeah, I was pretty sure that I had it last year. Just leaving New York, probably like picked it up on the flight, as we pick up most diseases. And I usually get really sick. Like when I got, like any time that I've gotten sick, which have been very few times in my life, I should say, it has put me almost at death's door.
H1N1 almost killed me. I had that H1N1.
Really?
Yeah.
I was where was I?
You were in some fantastic place.
Took him to the ER.
Yeah, I went to the ER. I said, I
3
think
in
I'm
the
dying.
morning.
It was 3 a.m. Like, I've never said this before. I said, I need to go to the emergency room. This is not good. So I thought I had leptospirosis, which is, back in my county experiences, we saw Borrelia and leptospirosis and all these crazy things. And I was on a Caribbean island that was having a leptospirosis outbreak.
He saw it in the newspaper.
And so I was so sick. I thought it's got to be what this is. I got to go to the ER and get this checked. And I ran in there. I said, I'm going to have a Herxheimer reaction, so don't give me the tetracycline yet. And first, and it was, they're like, lie down. Just
and he was
lie down.
tweeting at 6 a.m. telling everybody he had leptospirosis, and his management called me and said, take his phone away.
Yeah. So here's
He had a TV show.
So there's a bunch of
trying not
stuff.
to tell anybody.
There's a bunch of stuff sort of percolating around. One of our viewers is an infusion nurse, and she has been administering.
Is that Di?
Yeah.
Just asked Dr.
Yes,
Yo
yes.
heard about bamlanivimab.
Bamlanivimab.
Yeah, okay.
Bamlanivimab. Have you heard about this one? I think it's an IL-6 drug.
Yeah, I think one of my friends just actually texted me. He's a doctor in New York. I think NYU is doing a clinical trial with that. It's interleukin-6 inhibitor.
Yeah.
I believe NYU is doing the trial right now.
Oh no! Wait, no. Let's see. It's a neutralizing antibody. Hang on a second. A neutralizing antibody targets the receptor domain of the spike protein.
Oh, so that might be because Regeneron's. So there's another drug. I can't remember the name. My friend just texted me. That's the one that's the IL-6 blocker. But this one, the two, I can't think of the names off the top of my head. But the two monoclonal antibodies of Regeneron.
Two of them. They're Lyco V555 and LY3819253. Just proteins on the spike. I love it. I want more of this kind of stuff.
Comedy now.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that just went so far over my head that I was like, wow, I turn people into doctors every day, but you guys are like doctors. And so it's just like, oh, yeah, I'm going to nerd out over all these, like, proteins and shit. And I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah, I probably shouldn't have come in for this.
Keep us straight. That's why you're here.
But wait, I want to go back quickly just to the MMR thing. So
yes.
Essentially then, because, like, as it relates to... Like, I'm trying to get a grasp. So if you've had the MMR vaccine, there's a chance that if you contract COVID, you'll have a lesser reaction to it. But as you get older and more obese,
it wears off. Wears off, or you don't get it in the first place.
Okay. That makes sense now. Thank you. I understand it.
That's good news if it's true, because I just had one of those.
What's that? Oh, the MMR? I know, me too. And it's very interesting to me. And there is... The other thing I'm seeing, so again, there's lots of stuff sort of percolating around right now. I'm seeing data on cross-reactivity with other coronaviruses. Have you seen that, Yo?
Yes, yeah, that's been going on for a little while. We're suggesting that previous exposure to other coronaviruses, which sometimes I think people think that this is the only coronavirus. I mean,
right.
We've not SARS and MERS, but it's every season we have coronavirus that are in society, but that any exposure from previous coronaviruses can confer some sort of immunity, whether with antibodies and T-cell responses. So there's been definitely some suggestion, which is why, there's been some discussion about why some of these asymptomatic patients, why are they able to not have any symptoms?
Right.
And the suggestion has been that previous exposure to coronavirus could be a possible explanation.
So would that be like chicken pox parties? We're going to start having like coronavirus parties for our kids.
Well, no,
things like that,
actually,
so
no, because we're talking about colds. Like a common cause of the cold is coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And it may be that having had certain number of colds or certain quality of colds or certain particular pathogens causing colds confers some immunity against this virus.
Wait, so are you guys saying that we might actually cure the common cold
well,
as a result of this pandemic?
I'm going to predict that a big portion...
That would be good.
No. Listen, I don't know if you saw this, Dr. Yogendra, but there's a very cool technology out there of a nasal spray that blocks the ACE2 inhibitor. You seen this? I beg your pardon. I think it actually binds to the spike protein and prevents the viruses from getting in. So that could be the cure for a cold if there's a regional outbreak or something you want to protect yourself. Wow. Did you see that study?
No, I haven't. No,
that was interesting.
But along those lines, there is a company in England. I think that somewhere in the UK called Synergen that they're developing a nasal or a nebulized interferon.
Oh, there's that too. I saw that too. Yep. That's another. So there's all this stuff going on that's going to be just the way we deal. Have you ever in your entire career had spent so much time thinking about the cytokine system as the last 6 months? You know what I mean? Right?
Well, it's talking to some of the, I think, like, well, doctors from your generation that were in the forefront of HIV, it's and everything that we learn about the human body and immunology and critical care medicine, pathology, it's like history repeating itself again for doctors in my generation.
Yeah.
This is our HIV. I was a little kid when that epidemic took place. So
don't rub it in. So
this is going to be what defines, I guess, like your demographic generation.
Oh, for sure it is. Particularly the kids in medical school and residency right now. They're having an interesting experience, as we did. When I hit second year medical school, we were still calling AIDS GRIDS, gay-related intestinal disease syndrome. So I watched it come to life like in front of my eyes, and then I was out there to take care of people, hand over fist. So in this is a study I just emailed. I'm sending you all kinds of stuff, Dr. Yogendra. So this is a study of 30 genes that a CRISPR technology have isolated as, what should we say, cofactors in what the virus uses to get inside the cell. So in other words, there's a toolbox the virus needs to get inside the cell. But in this same study, they showed 3 medication that interfered with viral replication in their studies as well. And this fascinated me. One of them was Norvasc or amlodipine. And the reason it does it is it raises cholesterol inside the cell. Cholesterol, when people think about cholesterol, they think about the circulating cholesterol and all the different lipoproteins. That's a very different phenomenology than just the backbone of cholesterol, which is just a structure, just a genetic, a chemical structure floating free in the cytoplasm of a cell.
Okay.
Apparently, when you raise the free cholesterol in a cell, it interferes with the viral replication. And 3 medications were found to do that. One was amlodipine, which is a common blood pressure medicine. I'm on it. Feel pretty good about that. 2 is tamoxifen, which is a estrogen blocker for breast cancer patients. And the other is get this. I don't know what this, I had to go look this all up. Matrix metalloprotease inhibitor. And that's a class of medication that includes, and this is what I found interesting, doxycycline. So maybe the doxycycline that we've been advocating in the Zelenko method, maybe the doxycycline's mechanism is not antibacterial or antiviral, but actually this cholesterol elevation. Isn't that interesting?
That's very interesting. And that's also the antibiotic the doctors in Bangladesh and India using with the ivermectin protocol.
Well, that's what I'm going to use if I get sick. I'm going to use ivermectin and doxycycline. And that's what, actually, verbally, that's what Dr. Zelenko recommended. So there you go. So is it all making sense so far? Am I good?
You know what,
yeah,
though?
you're good. I'm just trying to remember what I was prescribed doxycycline for in the past.
Say it again.
I'm trying to remember what I was prescribed that for in the
Doxycycline?
past. Yeah.
Chlamydia?
Probably.
No, you could be, but but doxycycline.
Well, I did go to a British university.
Well, I'll tell you, doxycycline is. I had to give it to my daughter for the tick because it's treated for Lyme, it's prophylactic for rickettsial disease, Rocky Mountain spotted fever is treated that way.
Can I say something really quick about the layman in the world and the Zelenko protocol, blah, blah, blah?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was reading the list of things that I'd have to have if it occurred. I would need a physician to tell me what to take, and give me like a little pill box with it. It was
because the criteria were too confusing.
It's so confusing. It's like, and what, and how, and then.
Wow, I thought it was so easy.
It is easy, but it's like if you're sick, if you've got COVID-19 and you're coughing up a lung.
Well, let's be
and you have
fair.
a headache and a fever.
Look, you're not going to get ivermectin and doxycycline on your own. Your physicians have to prescribe.
So
this
it's
stuff.
basically what you hand to your physician and go, please tell me what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and your doctor may or may not be inclined to do this. This is what makes a ball game. If you learn nothing else about medicine through this outbreak, but that there is controversy and differing ideas, and your physician may or may not be inclined to try things that are more aggressive, frankly.
Right, and we're not telling everybody in our Twitter feed or our restream feed to run out and get all these items and just start taking that
No,
hand
no,
over
no.
fist.
No.
And
So obviously, like, I know a fair bit about medical biases from, I would say, more from like a racial perspective. Like, it's just one of the kind of topics that a lot of my candidates like to study. But how often do you both come across physicians with such an extreme bias that they like literally cannot be open-minded enough to entertain anything other than their own
It's a great question.
ideas? Yeah.
I'll let you answer that first, Dr.
Because this
Yogendra.
is two different generations of doctors here.
Super
so.
great question. Go ahead.
That's a very good question. And that's a question that's an issue that we're facing, Dr. Patterson and I, with treating these long haulers, and we'll get into that in a little bit in the discussion later. But we're dealing, especially with COVID-19. This is a new emerging pathogen. The issue with, well, not only with active COVID, but also the long haulers. This is a fairly new sort of pathology or situation we're dealing with. And it requires us to think outside the box, to think outside of from our medical training. And I think there are definitely biases. There are definitely, I think Dr. Drew brought up a good point about his training. It depends on where you train, your background, if you've done any work overseas, if you're familiar, comfortable with these medications, how also you're aware of the political and the sort of, with how the FDA works, these regulatory agencies, and working with patients around the country and trying to get emergency use authorization for a lot of these experimental drugs. It was very shocking how very little the doctors knew about the FDA, how to request these drugs. It's not part of our training.
Yeah, you're right.
You guys, sorry. I just want to touch on that last point. What's not part of your training? Like how to actually acquire drugs?
We are trained to apply the standard of evidence-based medicine, the standard of care, to the point where some of it has been actually formalized in what are called clinical pathways. We just follow the pathways that the hospital mandates, and we improvise around that and whatnot. But we have what we've done a million times is what's standard, what's the evidence. Something that's brand new in the face of an emergency. We don't know how do you navigate the FDA? How do you get these medicines? How do you get approval? Right? That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, that's the thing with the FDA. And I would also say, just getting a chance to talk to the researchers and doctors in other countries that are doing this research, and you realize, wow, what incredible talent and incredible minds these doctors, they're training and just out of the box thinking. I do think that there is some bias where if there is a US based publication versus something from Cuba.
For sure. Well, let me even go a little further and say that, and I don't want this to sound pejorative because I'm using it more as a construct than a criticism, but we get, in our medical world, we get a little culty. We get a little cultish. We follow what the leaders in our field tell us. We do it and do it and do it and do it. And then when somebody questions it, we go, don't question that. We don't. I've done it a million times. It works. And Dr. So-and-so at the NIH, I've been listening to him forever. Right? Do you agree with me, Dr. Yo?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we also look at, we're waiting for the big study from the NIH approved study. For example, the ivermectin study, the one that was done in South Florida, it was done by a private practice pulmonologist, critical care doctor. He really just thought outside the box. I think he had a lot of South American, Latin American patients, all of them talking about ivermectin. He said, what the hell? I'm going to try ivermectin. And he publishes a paper, a peer-reviewed paper now in one of the top respiratory journals. So we can't wait for these big academic centers. I mean, we are all a scientist at the end of the day. Dr. Drew, myself.
Well, we try to be. I'm not sure everyone's being trained quite that way these days, but yes, ideally that's true.
I mean, how much do you think that big pharma? Because I'm going to go straight to
big pharma does not. It's weird to me that think about this. How would big pharma affect my life? How does it get through to me? How do they adjust my decision making? I mean, they try to send salespeople in, and we don't talk to them.
Like the lobbyists and stuff.
No, salespeople. People that go back in the day, they would stock your closet with medication for free, so you can hand out medicines to your patients that needed it for free. Now we just don't even talk to them. We don't even accept pens from them, and the way they get to us is they advertise directly to our patients, and then the patient come to us and go, "I want the purple pill. I heard about the purple pill. I want that one." That's how they get through to us. But otherwise, do they have any effect on your practice, Dr. O?
On my daily practice, no. But in terms of COVID, it's made me think, sort of reevaluate things, because there are a lot of these tiny biotech companies. They don't have a lot of money, and they have some interesting drugs. And when you're looking at the clinical trials that in each of the hospitals, look, as a physician, if I know that there is a Pfizer or Eli Lilly or Gilead, I'm going to say, because I'm more comfortable, I'm familiar, I know the company, I'm going to say, wow, they've got a big study, they're going to have a lot of resources. I would want to put my patient into that. So there could be some bias into
That's
into
what
that.
I was kind of
Well, but
but
that's sort of brand comfort. You know what I mean? It's like we rely on them to give us the best products. I mean, we just sort of are more comfortable with that than something that is being churned out by a company we've never heard of. I get that. But speaking of which, I noticed in one of your tweets, or several of your tweets, Maraviroc is getting into the picture. Talk to me about that. That's a CCR5 antagonist, right?
It's a CCR5 antagonist for Kay and the rest of the layman's. I know Kay's got this look on her face like,
And me.
It's like I just saw a picture over here.
Well, the reason I'm
in.
interested in, he's been very involved in something called leronlimab, which is in the same vicinity. So go ahead. Has this replaced leronlimab? And
Thank you. Thank you for explaining it to us.
Go ahead, Dr. Yo.
Okay, so the CCR5 receptor is a specialized receptor on a certain type of immune cell called a T cell, and it was actually investigated extensively in HIV, where they found that one of the co-receptors of HIV, it binds. So the HIV has a glycoprotein on it that binds to the CD4. It's another receptor on the T cell. Well, they found that there was co-receptors, and one of them was the CCR5.
I'm going to show her a picture if I can get it here. So keep going.
It's so smart, and I'm just like,
Here it is.
sounds good.
See the
Sounds fucking
CD4?
great.
That's sort of how the...
Oh, okay, yeah, that actually does make
makes a
sense.
little more sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So there, every receptor has something called cytokines. They're immune, they're sort of immunoregulatory proteins.
Wait. I don't think you meant to say that. Say that again.
Immunoregulatory.
No, you said every receptor has a cytokine.
Right. Well, let me take that back.
Yes, you want to take that back.
Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead.
Okay, a lot of these receptors, like for example, the CCR5 is a receptor, and there is a corresponding cytokine, or in this case, a chemokine called RANTES. And RANTES is a specialized cytokine called chemokine because it acts as an attractant. It's what we call a chemotaxic drug. Chemotaxic.
It makes cells come into the area. Makes the immune cells come in.
Okay. That
Right.
I can picture, so it makes sense to me.
And it's mostly T cell attraction, right? Helper T cells?
It gets T cells, macrophages. It's all the sort of attracts all the immune cells. CK, I use this example. If you were in a dark room and I was on the other side and we had you blindfolded, and if I had cologne on, you would be able to sniff and kind of come near me. But if I put a little, like a clamp on your nose, you wouldn't have any direction where I was. And that's really what the mechanism of action of some of these, what's called CCR5 antagonists, is they're blocking that signal from that RANTES from binding to the receptor and attracting that immune cell to the site of inflammation.
Okay, so trying to picture it one more time. So is that a positive or a negative? Because
it's neither. It depends. That's probably the answer.
Okay,
if you're,
it's contextual.
Because think about it. Right. Because think about it. If you have an infection going on, you want those immune cells to come in. You want, because that's part of the inflammation process. But if you have too much inflammation or a hyper-inflammatory process taking place, then that can be detrimental. That actually, those cells can start attacking their own tissue.
Right. And the storm. This is what we think causes all the lung inflammation. So.
Oh, okay. So that makes sense. Okay, thanks for explaining it.
We'll keep going over because it is something. It's so interesting to me that as long as I've known about the cytokine system, I've never been as involved with it as in the last 5 months. It's top of mind all the time. I'm thinking about it a lot. And so some of these things that were just letters and names, and I kind of knew the cascade, are becoming very, very, very important and explicit. And we're finding ways of attacking this cascade in different ways. I think it's going to change how we deal with critical care, because I think some of what we call sepsis may end up being this cytokine activation syndrome. So let me ask something. Somebody asked, Andrew just asked a really good question. I don't want to I'll get back on the Maraviroc and other things in a second. But what did you think about the FDA waiting till December 8th to begin to think about the Pfizer vaccine?
I have no idea why. I actually was very encouraged by the data from both Moderna and Pfizer.
Why would they wait? Essentially, I'm mortified that they're waiting until December 8th. I'm furious.
I
and
guarantee
mortified.
it's because someone in leadership has a trip booked. I guarantee it's because of something that pedantic. And the fact that we talked about it yesterday and no one even got in touch to like clarify, that screamed volumes to me as well. Like, I don't know. You guys work with, and communicate with people in these realms all day, every day.
No.
How much does personality come into how this whole thing has played out?
Well, that's a gigantic question.
Yeah.
I think it has been very involved. Politics and personalities and things that should not have been involved in any press, things that should have not been involved with this in any way, became very involved with it. And that's just the Zelenko story and hydroxychloroquine and stuff. The man was condemned for thinking outside the box.
All the censorship.
But anyway, I'm mortified. I'm really angry. I'm mortified. I predicted I would get that goddamn vaccine by December 10th. You know what I mean? I should be able to get it by mid-December.
It is very puzzling because the data was very, very strong. The efficacy was, I think, 94.5% for Moderna, 95% for Pfizer.
Wow.
And they looked at, when you look at the studies, I think it was like 40,000 for the Pfizer and 34,000 for the Moderna.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a huge patient group, or the numbers in the study. So I don't know. I thought that they would. I thought it would be an immediate authorization.
That's what I thought. Some sort of EUA or something, or at least an emergency evaluation. I thought they would spend all week, like 24/7, working on it instead of shelving it for 3 weeks. It's just it's sort of unconscionable to me. But I guess maybe there's a reason. I don't know. What's that?
Well, okay, so I was going to ask, Big Pharma, they obviously don't have to undertake any kind of like Hippocratic oath when they are the people who create the medication to save people and, are, like you said earlier.
Well, but to be fair, lots of physicians are involved, and pharmacists and people that have a lot of ethical standards are involved in this.
But from a kind of management perspective, like someone is stopping these from being released. So there's got to be someone in there who's like, people are going to die as a result of this vaccine not being released, hypothetically.
Yep, maybe.
Right?
But I'm worried that came from somewhere. I don't know where. I can't imagine where. But it may be just as what you're saying. The people are on vacation, or they couldn't assemble the right people.
What's
the name of the Secretary of HHS? Azar. Azar used to be the CEO of Lilly. He knows how to do these things. And so I'm a little surprised. Anyway, let's leave it because we just don't know what's going on. We can get angry and we can speculate. We just don't know. Mm-hmm. But there was somebody on my thread here, Dr. Yo, a minute ago named Kaylee, who was saying that it sounded like she was measured by you guys. She's a long hauler.
Yes, I know Kaylee. I've talked to her on the phone. I know she is.
Tell us what's going on with Kaylee.
Yeah, so we've been measuring. A paper comes out, I think, probably next week. Probably after I get off the chat with you, I have to input a bunch of data in for the paper. We are looking at 64 patients. 64 patients will be in the study where we looked at the immune profile of these long haulers and what are long haulers, and they're the patients that are having these complications and symptoms after COVID.
And you've now sort of codified that with the Patterson scale.
Yeah, Dr. Patterson, I'm only going to give her teaser. The whole the meat and potatoes will come out in the paper. Bruce is very like, let's give him little pieces of meat here and there. We don't want to give the full course, but he's developed what's called a long hauler index, looking at certain immune parameter or cytokines and some T cell markers. And Kay, I know you're looking at what a T cell marker is. So the T cells, immune cells, they have certain markers on it, and depending on
it's
their response.
very much like what the CD4 thing I showed you a picture of. CD4,
okay,
CD8, all these different kind of markers. Okay, right? Those are the markers you're talking about.
Exactly, and Dr. Patterson and his team at IncelDX have identified certain patterns or a signature in these long haulers. And the last numbers we got from the bioinformatics team was the algorithm is about 98% sensitive and 98% specific, meaning we're pretty confident in predicting if someone is a long hauler. Now, one of the things that I always talk about is clinical relevance. Like, what does it mean clinically for a patient? Because you can have all these great research. Well, it's a diagnostic tool now, we think, that physicians and clinicians can use to first identify someone as a long hauler. And I think that is, to hear these long haulers talk about how much their physicians and their healthcare providers are saying there's nothing, it's all in their head, and to validate that with a test. So now we feel very confident that we have a test that we can say, here it is, this is what's wrong. And we can use that as a diagnostic marker to see their response to therapy and treatment. That they get to a certain level, then they're no longer a long hauler. So it allows us, as me as a clinician, to have that marker, that guidance to see if they're responding, rather than just saying, well, are you feeling better? No, yes, no,
right. I mean, so it's criteria and then ways to quantitate response, essentially, right? And the same thing, the criteria should reduce as you respond quantitatively, right? There should be a way of measuring it, and then the clinical, and by the way, if they don't improve clinically, their scale won't improve, right? So these you want to see improvement of both to know that we're doing something.
And we're seeing that. So the 64, we actually have more patients, but we cut it off at 64 because we wanted to get the paper and data out there. But what's interesting is now we're testing, we have the baseline levels, and we're testing the patients for their response to these medications. And we just got the first results of the steroid group. And what's really interesting is their long hauler index score came down, and that correlated with that decrease in symptomatology. So it's very exciting that for a certain group of people, possibly steroids might be working.
What are the patients telling you? Are they happy? Are they excited that they're getting relief? I mean, what's their sort of experience like?
They're just happy someone is talking to them.
Right,
I mean,
right.
that's I think the fact that whether we can come up with a treatment or whatnot, the fact that I get on the phone with them, and Bruce also gets on the phone with them, we talk to these patients, that's 80% of the game right there. But
there's an important psychological
I was about
thing,
to say,
which is sick people like to be acknowledged. It's very important to go, even if you have nothing. This is a lesson for your generation now, Yogendra. If you don't have anything to offer, we as physicians tend to push people away. And the thing to do is bring them in and go, I hear what's going on. It's something is there, but I can't define it, and I'll keep thinking about it. But I don't have anything to offer right now. People don't mind that. They don't, but going, scram, they mind that, and they should.
I mean, how much does positive psychology, if you had to give a metric
it's really,
to it?
look, if you're sick and somebody's telling you, no, you're not, you feel crazy. And people are, you have to listen very, very, very carefully to people. And that's what these guys have done. And that helps them. That just helps them. And it gives them hope, right? Hope that somebody's onto this and thinking about it and going to help them through it. Dr. Yogendra, let's flip around for a second. One of my restreamers was asking about how you felt about U.S. versus Europe, say even versus India. And there's a set of videos from a British nurse. They call him Dr. Campbell. He's a nurse, actually. But actually really good educational videos on YouTube. But have you heard of him, A, and B, any thoughts on the differences in the international management of the outbreaks?
I think some people had mentioned about Dr. Campbell. I haven't come across that, but there's so many great people on social media, so I haven't. But in terms of the management, I know out in England they're looking at different vaccines. I think it's the adenovirus, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine.
Yeah, which is going to be cheaper and more widely distributed in other countries. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That makes me feel very proud of Britain.
Yeah, that's going to be their main vaccine.
There's a lot of great things coming from my other homeland, the UK. Like I said, Synogen. There's another drug called Pneumogen. They're a Scottish company that's making another inhaled glycan covering to prevent the virus from attacking, and AstraZeneca's Oxford study. But in terms of the treatments, I'm not exactly sure what, if they're using remdesivir or Regeneron. I'm not sure if they have access to those medicines. I'm not. I do know in India they are using remdesivir. I do know.
But that is another thing I wanted to ask you about. Did you see that World Health Organization position paper like 3 days ago? Did you read it? Did you actually see the paper? It was one of the most bizarre papers I've ever read.
Why?
Did you have that experience with it? Did you really see what they were doing?
Yes. The panel they put together was...
Who were these people?
Oh, is this the one you were talking about yesterday where it's like, we're just going to throw some spaghetti and whoever it lands on is going to be part of this study?
Well, we got 4 patients and we have an ethicist. Like, that's not how you do medical research.
Yeah.
That's how you arrive at sort of clinical standards and things maybe, but it's not medical research.
You can't even get a bachelor's with that kind of shit.
I read this yesterday. I'm going to read it again because it's so stunning, the actual conclusion of the paper. It really was something else. Oh no! Did I get rid of it?
Wait, Dr. Yo, where in Britain do you?
Is.
Oh, is
Don't say "oh no" in the middle of a stream. He scared me.
Sorry. So here it is. The possibility of important harm is there, which is true. They acknowledge, however, that the values and preferences are likely to vary amongst patients. Values and preferences? What does that have to do with whether or not a chemical is efficacious or not?
Did they even control for that?
No. And there will be patients and clinicians who choose to use remdesivir given the evidence has not excluded the possibility of benefit. That's their conclusion. And so I went back in the other World Health Organization literature, and it's super, super clear. They don't like the price. They don't like the price. And they should just say that. It's not worth the price. That's okay. I get that. But this study was, and then the U.S. press picked it up and ran with it as though it was some sort of authoritative article. It was really a stunning thing to me.
Can you send it to me? I might actually do an analysis of it on my website because that just sounds like the most ridiculous shit under the sun.
So here's another interesting thing about remdesivir that I stumbled upon about 2 days ago. That the FDA gave an EUA, an emergency use authorization for the drug, a rheumatoid arthritis drug, baricitinib. It's a JAK inhibitor.
Yeah, I wanted that was gonna be my next topic for you. So they're adding it now with this JK inhibitor, right?
With remdesivir.
Yeah.
And they said that using baricitinib by itself is not approved for use in COVID-19, but you have to use it with remdesivir. So it's very interesting looking at what they were suggesting, because they said it's using baricitinib with remdesivir had better outcomes than just using remdesivir alone. But then, you've got the World Health Organization saying that it doesn't work. You have the FDA has given full approval for remdesivir. It's very mishmash. It's very confusing.
Yes.
I went to the clinical trial website trying to look up the actual study. There's nothing there. So there's no data that's been released. We just have an EUA from the FDA. There is data. It just hasn't been released to the general public.
Right. It's hard to get it. Well, I'm poor. I'm trying to find this original article from the BMJ on remdesivir, and now I can't find it. It's very interesting.
Oh, this happens a lot. There was a study actually earlier this year that my dad read an article about on the Hill to do with mobile phones and brain tumors. And then the next day when he went to go and find it and send it to me, because I wanted to obviously analyze it for work, couldn't find the article, all went away. We don't talk about that anymore. I have so many clients that happens to as well.
Isn't that interesting?
They accidentally uncover something that's going to not be popular for most people, and then they just either get paid to make it go away or...
I hate to think that that's what's happening, but who knows?
Or they got censored.
Yeah, which these days, I mean, who knows?
Oh, it's so easy to get censored these days. I mean, okay, then question for both of you.
Yes.
Who would you guys consider an authority? Like, say if say if Rand come out with a study, I know that I'm going to read it, and 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be like, oh, you know what? If Rand have done this much detail, like they've got I'm going to listen to these
I understand.
guys.
How would you answer that?
So I guess, Kay, I guess maybe a question is like, who are the sources that we go to? Like,
Yeah, who are the sources
Yeah.
that are authoritative, that when they publish something, we go, that's likely to end up being true.
Yeah.
I mean, you see, if we start questioning our institutions and these revered journals and respected doctors, then we're not going to have a system in place. So I think at the end of the day, you know, the WHO, the CDC, the NIH, the Lancet, BMJ.
I worry about the World Health Organization, and by the way, Lancet, when I was in medical school, was disgraceful. So these things go through incarnations.
They got so much shit with our clients.
But Dr. Drew, but at the end of the day, this is why we are clinicians. We are physicians. We're not sheep, and we're not technicians. That's my one thing I'll post on social media. We're physicians, not technicians. So you can give us that information, and just like Dr. Drew, you brought up the WHO. Okay, we can blindly say no remdesivir, but we're critically thinking. We have a discussion amongst ourselves, which is not. We're not having these discussions a lot with physicians. This is why I enjoy talking with Dr. Drew and Dr. Patterson and many others, is we can brainstorm things, and I may not agree with what he says. He may not agree with me, but we sort of come to an understanding, a better approach, and really discern what is out there.
Well, and by the way, even if we don't come up with a consensus while we're talking, we're moving our thinking forward the whole time.
Do you know what? That's how British people basically get through everything. Is we go down to the pub, we have a drink, and that's how we just get into the weeds on it. We surround ourselves with people who just want to talk about the thing, whether it's
That's interesting.
You know, obviously not medical drugs, because none of my friends are that clever apart from you guys. But, you know, I mean, it sounds then like you guys really approach it from more of a network perspective, like the efficacy of the study, the efficacy
I mean, we're trained to, I mean, really we're trained to use evidence-based approaches. And if we're going to change our practice, we have to read the landscape of literature on a particular topic. And then if some new information lands, has to be evaluated in the context of currently available wisdom, right? And so it helps us at very minimum, you start with, the probability of this being accurate is high or low, because there's a lot of literature going the other direction. Therefore, it's probably low, but let me look at it. And if the assumptions are wrong, or then the statistical analysis is off, then you go, okay, well, that's, then I'm less likely to, but I'll file it away, and maybe the whole body of literature will start moving in that direction. You got to watch that.
Well, that's
and
my
then
job.
I'll change my practice.
My job is to get those papers out.
Yeah, I know
People who
that.
can't write
I
them.
know that. That's why you're here. She puts those papers out, she can help you.
Well, actually, my next question then was going to be, Dr. Yo, if you don't mind me asking, you look like you might be in the millennial generation, maybe?
I'm Gen X.
So you're
Barely.
you're born before 1982.
You look good
I was
for your
born
age.
1978.
Okay, yeah. So you're Gen X. How do you see? I wish we had a millennial doctor here whose brain I could pick, because I love generational studies. And my next follow-up was going to be, how open do you find people in, say, your generation of physicians are to?
Well, you were sort of asking us
Kind of
that
the same
before.
area,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was what you're asking us before. So I think I may have jumped on that one a little bit. So I'll let Dr. Yogendra answer that.
So could you rephrase that question, Kay? You're saying like
How open are you? Or do you feel you're open or closed as it pertains to what, thinking and practice?
Yeah, I would say, so open-mindedness obviously is something that like a lot of my students will study, and they want.
We
to
were very
study.
militaristic when I was being trained. Military.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Is like how much are you taught to question? How much are you taught to explore as doctors in this day and age, versus, I don't even know, like 100 years ago when I guess like it
When
was
I
just
was
all
training. 100 years ago when I was training.
back at the NIC.
Very funny.
as most answers in medicine would go, it depends, and that really depends on your situation. I find one of the reasons I didn't go into academics was it was just too
Sensible.
confining. There's just so many rules and regulations. I have a department head. I have to run things through, and I didn't really, private practice has been just blah. But this is why I love working with someone like Dr. Patterson, so open-minded. I'll give you an example. We started talking to long haulers and realizing they are taking ivermectin to treat their long hauler symptoms. Why? We don't know. So what I told was, Bruce, can we test ivermectin? Let's get their immunology. Let's test, let's see why they're feeling better. What is the mechanism of action? And Bruce Patterson goes, yes, let's do it. So next week, we're getting our first set of blood work from ivermectin. Same thing with Maravirac. It's an HIV drug, FDA approved for HIV. We're off-labeling it for long haulers. Same thing. We're seeing some group of physicians, and I think some of maybe the younger doctors that are in private practice are a little bit more receptive to working with us, whereas once in academics and big institutions, there is just a lot more regulation and really restricts the way they can think and what they can do, and just a lot of BS, in my opinion.
Well, that's pretty much why I think most of my clients come to me, is because they're just sick of the BS or the bullshit. Especially since like most of the people, like I always like to joke that like I've yet to meet a chair or a committee member for someone's real academic studies who is as qualified as the person undertaking the study, which was kind of my biggest concern. And yeah, I agree. Like there's so many restrictions in academia as to what you're even allowed to publish as well. They seem to be very stringent, but it sounds like there are lots of studies that are out there. I don't know. Is there another one that we can kind of dig into that I can learn about from you guys?
In terms of
just like we have been today.
Oh, newer studies?
Yeah.
Well, God, there's so much stuff going on right now.
Hi, I'm gonna ask the biggest questions.
I wanted to circle back to the baricitinib because I don't know where that came from. Maybe explain what a JK inhibitor is and why they might have thought about combining that remdesivir. I don't get it. To me, it was like sort of, what? Where'd this come from?
Okay, so we talked about Maravirac and leronlimab working on that CCR5 receptor. The JAK inhibitor, the easiest way to look at it, it's a common pathway or of that all these cytokines, how they have their effect on the cell. So the cytokine will come in, there's a receptor, and how that signal is transduced into the cell to get the cell, the what's called signal transduction, right? Where the cell then can take that message and sort of let me try also. So there is different. This is cellular biochemistry and physiology, right? So things fly around outside a cell. And generally the way they affect the cell is by binding on something floating in the lipid membrane. And that can either change the configuration of the protein that immediately does something, like changes ion fluxes. Or
like in zombie movies where you see the thing attached to the thing. And
then they change.
Yeah, and then it changes rapidly and cannibalizes itself.
But this signal transduction is which is a sort of a cascade inside the cells of one thing triggering some more things, triggering some more things, and ultimately, usually going into the nucleus of the cell and altering the whole cell biochemical cell function. Is that about right? Did I sort of?
Okay.
Yeah, it's always easier if we have if I have like a whiteboard and I can just draw.
Yeah. Well, that's Kay is our whiteboard. She is our whiteboard today, so it's perfect.
You've got a whiteboard. Why don't you just?
When I do whiteboards, it looks like just scribble. So
way to be a stereotype.
Well, we're saying.
But simply put, Kay, what the JAK inhibitors do, it's preventing the signal of the cytokine from going into the cell. That's really the simplistic way of doing it. And it's been studied extensively in rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. That's a lot of the research and our understanding has gone into. Now, in active COVID, you can break it down into two phases. There's the first part of the disease is virally induced, and they're the ones that are going to have the cough, the cold, a lot of those common symptoms. But at some point, there is a transition where these patients go into what's called an immunological phase, where these cytokines, those proteins that the immune cells make, they kind of go into hyperdrive. And there's been a lot of research into repurposing some of these rheumatoid arthritis drugs and some of these inflammatory diseases, the drugs used for them to treat the cytokine storm. And baricitinib is an FDA-approved medication, a JAK inhibitor that it's the method of action, like I said, is to prevent that signal. But it's very interesting because it works on so many different cytokines. There's probably about 15 different cytokines it works. And they're obviously using it, trialing it in COVID-19. But I'm looking at it also for the long haulers, because some of their cytokines that are elevated are ones that possibly baricitinib could be a potential use.
But doesn't it seem weird to you that they're at once going at, I mean, there's sort of two phases of this illness. There's the viral phase and then there's the inflammatory phase. And putting the two medicines together is sort of doing both at the same time, is it not?
Well, remdesivir, if it's an antiviral, and all the studies across the board said you have to give it early.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because it's an antiviral. The early part of the infection is induced or caused by the virus. But it doesn't have really much effect on the immunological phase. And this is why when doctors are giving remdesivir, when a patient is intubated in the ICU, they're in the immunological phase, they're going, oh, remdesivir doesn't work. Well, of course it doesn't. You're not giving it in the right phase of the disease. It's the same thing with hydroxychloroquine. Across, back in March and April, we were giving hydroxychloroquine to intubated patients and saying, it doesn't work. Well, of course it doesn't. Look at the mechanism of action,
Right?
how it's supposed to be working. So I think the idea behind remdesivir and baricitinib is that you're going to have remdesivir will take care of the viral component of it, and baricitinib will start to kick in for the immunological phase. And there isn't like this hard cutoff, like, oh, day 5, the virus goes down and suddenly something goes up. There's a lot of this overlap taking place. And Dr. Patterson is seeing elevated cytokines at day 3, which kind of goes against what the paradigm of our thinking is usually about day 7 to 10 is when those cytokines are elevated. So again, there's a lot of this overlap. There's no like hard cutoff. So I like the approach of the remdesivir and baricitinib, but I think they're better immunomodulators, and I talked extensively about that, like leronlimab and maraviroc.
How is leronlimab
Kate's
doing?
like,
I was like, I understand it. I can picture it all, but I'm also like, I have so many more questions.
Well, let's do it. But let me ask a couple quick, though.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Somebody on the stream was asking, why do you think UK does not report recovered cases the way we do in the US? Do you have any opinion about that?
I'm not sure what
British people fucking hate being happy.
It's weird. Flipping birdies, I see you there. I'm trying to understand what you're asking. We all work to provide a need for each other. That's what the market is. I mean, that's the invisible hand, flipping birdies. That's what the whole barter exchange. It's as Adam Smith said, the butcher gives good quality meat to the customer because of the invisible hand. That seems to mete out our ability to work on behalf of one another. So I'm not quite sure what you're getting at, my friend. So, and it's sort of off topic, so I'm sorry about that, but it's sort of in a different, maybe tomorrow we can get into that a little bit. The other question I had, I've lost it. Why don't you ask some of yours? You had some. You said you have lots of questions.
Oh, no, I mean, one of the first ones I was going to ask was, you said that, I can't remember the exact nomenclature, so I'm not even going to try.
Give us a hint.
But so you're seeing elevated levels of the thingy things at day 3 when you should have been seeing it at 7 and 8. Does that play into the more physical factors of the patient? I'm just trying to, So that's kind of.
Again, it's this is a heterogeneous response. You're seeing that in COVID-19. It's a heterogeneous disease. And we're also seeing that it's being reflected in the long haulers too. Even though there is a signature, there are all these other cytokines that are elevated. So my point about the day 3 is some of them are getting a little bit worse. That's why you might have some of those patients that, they quickly they fall ill and they end up in the ICU and they're intubated on a ventilator. And there could be a possibility that it might be cytokine driven a little bit early. Why someone goes into a cytokine storm, we don't really know. There's been suggestion there might be some genetic component, other factors. It's unknown why someone would go into that right now. And
so hang on a second. So you're talking about there's crazy different ways this thing can present. Some people get a horrible flu syndrome, and it's a viral syndrome, and then no inflammatory thing to follow. or a horrible flu thing and an inflammatory thing to follow, or seemingly both at the same time, or no flu thing and they just come in with a pulmonary embolus because they're hypercoagulable from a inflammatory thing. So there's all these different variations on the theme. And I think that's what you're talking about, right? And why the sequence of events is not more predictable.
Absolutely. And, and it reflects, as we, again, talking about the clinical relevance, how do we treat these patients? What's the approach? This is why some clinicians are going to say, well, remdesivir works for some of them, and, oh, this other drug works for something else. And I sometimes, I talk a lot about these new experimental drugs, Kay, on Twitter and social media. And I get a lot of these investors that follow me, and they think that these drugs are going to be, they can make you walk on water and, all sorts of things. And I'm like, listen, like a drug like leronlimab, it's a monoclonal antibody. We can talk offline. I'll give you all the information on it.
Thank you.
But it's a drug that I think has a lot of promise in the severe and critical patients for COVID-19. I'm not exactly sure if it has an effect on the mild to moderates. And I say that, and people go, oh my God, I thought you were the messenger for this drug. It's across the board. And I keep on telling them, the human body cannot be looked through in a vacuum. Dr. Patterson, the other researchers can get the response in the lab and immunologically, but that does not mean that it aligns or it correlates clinically. And not everyone is going to respond to all of these medications. And that's why we need more tools in the toolbox. Because as a clinician, then I can say, okay, this doesn't work. Let me try this. Instead of saying, let me just keep on giving this drug because it worked for the last 50 of my patients. And that's where it comes being a physician, being critically thinking, understanding, asking why. And I think that's where it goes to the root of it.
So there you go. Other questions?
Wow. Here's a question that was earlier. I don't know if the guy's still on here because it was a long time ago, but can you read it, Drew?
We're talking about Christopher Lundgren's?
No, I don't know. He was all in caps, but I grabbed it. It's a good question.
Where do I see? Oh, should I go to the ER right away because I keep hearing ER room won't accept you unless you have a severe case, but you say to get on the drug treatment the earliest onset. Okay, no. You got to listen to this very, very carefully. I apologize if you misconstrue what I said. What I said is that people who are clearly in a risk category, over the age of 75, obese, metabolic syndrome, antiphospholipid syndrome, and you get sick, doctors are encouraging you in earlier to get treatment if you start to get even moderate disease.
Well, let's say this person's obese.
If you have mild to moderate disease, you are fine staying home, but you typically want to watch your oxygen saturation, and you must talk to your doctor and communicate regularly and consider being put on something because there's some options out there. Dr. Joe, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting. I think it was Chris, his name, talked about the emergency room. So Regeneron and Eli Lilly, both of their monoclonal antibodies, got EUAs. The interesting thing is the method of administration is through IV, and it's not for hospitalized patients. So it's a very narrow scope of how the FDA has allowed the use of the EUA for the drugs. Meaning...
Yeah, where do you get that then? Like, if you're not going to be getting it?
That's $1 million question, and one we're not exactly sure. I know some of my ER friends are puzzled about it because they're going, our ERs are full. We've got COVID, influenza, we got heart attacks, trauma patients, and now we're going to have, obviously COVID patients coming in with IV infusions.
Right.
They can't get this at IV infusion sites because a lot of these places are where cancer patients are getting their treatment.
Right.
And you can't have COVID patients walking in there.
Right.
What do we do about that? So I'm not exactly sure. I do like that they got an emergency use authorization because it's more tools in the toolbox. And both those drugs are great for the mild to moderate. So the important thing to keep in mind is the monoclonal antibodies from Eli Lilly and Regeneron target the virus.
Yes.
The other monoclonal antibodies that I've been talking about, leronlimab, lanzulumab, and the whole list, they target specific cytokines and their receptors.
Right.
So
the inflammatory piece.
Exactly. So I think sometimes there's a confusion where, I can use Regeneron later on in the disease, in the severe and critical. And actually the FDA has that's part of the reason that it's saying it's only for the mild to moderate, non-hospitalized patients.
Right. But that is part of why whoever asked that question was sort of distorting what I was saying. So that's why doctors are saying come in early to get these things, because they are not effective later. And they are very effective early.
Okay.
So the remdesivir, the Regeneron. If I get sick, that's exactly what I want. I want the Trump protocol.
But here's the question: like, if you don't have a doctor and you have to go to the emergency room, and they say you have to be super sick, and you don't know what to take when you have the early stages, like, you have to have a doctor, right?
Yes, correct. You should have your own physician whom you can talk to about it. And if you don't, if you're in a system, sometimes the system will give you nurse practitioners and other people to talk to. You should be communicating with medical personnel, bottom line. And what most people do is they either don't have insurance or aren't part of a system and just run to the emergency room. Worst possible medical care. Worst thing you can do. Worst thing.
Did you see Joseph's super chat question?
I asked Dr. Yo about the Mets at the end. Super happy about their future. What happened? You guys get a trade or something? And thank God for him and Dr. Patterson and helping the long haulers, Joe.
Somebody paid for it, $5 for that.
But go ahead, Dr. Yo. What's going on with the Mets?
Well, here's a quick story. Well, so they got a new owner, Steve Cohen. But here's the interesting thing about the Mets, and it goes to what Kay was asking me. Kay, I was born in Sheffield, in England. And I grew up
nice.
Yeah, and the last place we lived was Croydon. But when I was 6.5, in the middle of in 1985, when my parents moved and I moved to the U.S. I grew up in Brooklyn, and you had to pick. I got picked on by the kids. I mean, when you're Yogendra, a skinny brown kid with a British accent, the kids in New York are going to beat the crap out of you.
It's the accent.
Right, it's the accent. Well, it's probably also like Ram Yogendra. So,
it's too good.
Right. It was just too easy.
Normal name for where I'm from.
Yeah, but
like
for a young male, that's just too much to good territory to work on.
Exactly. So I the Mets were really good in the mid '80s, and I became friends with the Mets fans to protect me, so I would get less beat up by the Yankees fans.
Nice.
So it's like it's a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
I became a diehard Mets fan. Now, I wish someone had told me that it would be a lifetime of misery, because after 1986, they have not won the championship. They just broken my heart.
I don't know if you're a Howard Stern fan, but Gary has been a lifelong Mets fan as well.
I do watch the Howard Stern show, yes.
And so Gary's been suffering alongside of you.
So we are excited. We got a new owner. The old ownership group was terrible. We got a new owner, Steve Cohen, and he's about to pump. He's the richest baseball owner, actually richest owner in all of baseball. And the plan is, I think that he's going to pump in about $150 million into the payroll, and we're all giddy like school kids.
Well, I just watched Moneyball, and obviously, as a result, I know everything about baseball.
Yes.
Clearly, just from watching.
Go
that
watch.
one film.
I'm recommending The Queen's Gambit for you. I think you'd enjoy it.
Oh, I love that.
saw it?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
I'm
All
about halfway through. I've got to
right, good.
finish it, and I do love a bit of chess. I'm terrible at it, but
I think I know everything about chess now. That's ever been written.
well, it's like I know everything about like inhibitors and all that kind of stuff now as well.
Yeah. Well, you probably know. I mean, just this level of conversation, we weren't having this level of detail about this inflammatory system almost ever. Maybe in medical school, and that was it. But now that's what I'm saying. It's top of mind now. We're all thinking about this stuff, which is going to mean we're going to learn stuff. We're going to have new approaches. We're going to be thinking about it in different situations and applying therapeutics that we just did not have before. So it's going to be good.
So this decade's going to be defined by COVID-19 and the treatment, and also the Mets being good again. That's what this decade's really going to be about.
They'll win and nobody can come watch.
No, we're going to all get vaccinated and go to City. What's the Mets stadium? City
Field.
City Field. Yeah, City Field. Okay, now wait a minute.
I can't wait.
Okay, Anthony Brown wants us to switch categories into the homeless thing, which Kay and I Anthony, you must know that Kay and I have been going off. That's how we met.
Yeah.
Because she called it genocide, and I said, bring that young lady to me because she gets what's going on. Dr. Yo, I think we're going to kind of wrap this up. I think we've just to keep the baseball.
We're going to get into the depressing stuff now.
Yeah, let's keep the baseball topic going. We've run. What do you call it when you get a single, double, triple home run? Run the cycle. We've run the cycle. right?
Yeah, it's so good to see you.
Yeah, it's great
Every
to see
time
you.
you come on, you get a little more professional. Your lighting gets better, your backdrop gets better, your sound gets better. I'm
When
very
are we going to
impressed.
get to come on your show?
We have to go to New York.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I'm down. Let's go.
He follow him on
Excuse
Twitter.
me.
He's very creative on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't know. He pulled the Simpson the 3 seconds that I was on the Simpsons. He pulled that out as a GIF today. And I don't know where you got that, but
Dude, that's
It's-
so cool. You're on The Simpsons. That's going to get me so much more street cred with my family again. I love it.
well, Yo found one piece of it, a bizarre piece that I don't understand where they
one
got
where you
that
turn
idea.
into the Hulk.
When I turned into the Hulk, exactly.
It was awesome. You've made it when you have your own GIF or GIF, and it's one of those things like when I grow up, I want to be like Dr. Drew and have my own.
Have your own
Dr.
GIF,
Drew.
but make sure it's by the Simpsons cartoonist.
Exactly,
I
right.
thought when I was
It's on the Family Guy too.
yeah, I was Chris's
popped Chris's
dermatologist.
zit.
Yeah, I was Chris's
Oh, that's
dermatologist. I
so
thought that was
funny.
this.
We
as
still
cool
get
as it
money
got.
for that occasionally. I get like a check for $15 or something.
Oh, that's really
every
funny.
time
I
it
didn't know
airs.
that.
Let's just hope that you guys don't get dragged into South Park, or maybe we should.
Oh, I would
think
happily
that
do
would
that. Are
also
you
be a
kidding? They
gift.
don't. They have a problem though. They don't. If you notice, all the voices are Matt and Trey, except for what's his name?
I
Who
was
was the
gonna
chef?
say,
Except
They
for
have
chef.
an attack,
But there's
too.
a
It's
woman. One of
amazing.
the have you guys seen? Was it 6 Days to Air, 7 Days to Air?
8 Days to Air. Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
There's a woman that does it too. Yeah.
Oh my god.
But they had some union problem or something, so they have to stay with these just few people, and that's it. They used to do all kinds of people would come in, and then they stopped.
I mean, maybe
You're
Matt
on-
or Trey will do you.
When
That
you
would
were
be
on the
great.
Family Guy, it
That would
was
be
so
beyond.
fun. though.
I'd lose my mind about
It
it.
was really fun.
Okay, Dr.
It's fun to
Yogendra,
see.
where do you want people to find you? What's coming up?
So, Twitter, Yo Dr. Yo. You can see my YouTube stuff, Dr. Yo. And probably in the next, I'm going to say right after Thanksgiving, we'll have the paper out. We're sort of in the draft phase. The Long Hauler project, the website should be up. I think I sent you a landing page, Dr. Drew. That'll be up in a couple of days.
Great.
We're going to be off to the races. We're starting to treat these patients and looking for doctors. We're starting to create this network of doctors, like-minded doctors around the country. Even some from England are reaching out to us to help treat our UK
Well, let me
friends.
ask you this. Let me just ask you this. Are you hopeful? Are you feel as though you're improving these long haulers?
Yeah, we're starting to.
Yeah.
I can't say conclusively, but from the data so far, yes, we're very thrilled and excited. We want to see the response now immunologically and symptomatology. Hopefully in another week or 2 weeks, we should have those responses. But we're really excited about the paper, getting this data out there. I think if anything, it's going to at least, it's like this. If you have a chest pain and you get an EKG and you show your doctor, I've got ST segment elevations or something, or some arrhythmia, they're going to say, we have to do something about it. And what we're hoping with this paper and the data is to tell our medical colleagues and our other doctors is, look, we found something wrong in these patients. Let's figure out something to do. What's the game plan?
Send me that landing page again. I don't know that I have it, and I'd love to be able to send patients there who are falling into the category. Also, B World here on the chat stream is saying that the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices is scheduling a meeting for November 23rd to set a pre-approval process for COVID-19 vaccines. So maybe that's the delay. So there you go. So there's a pre-approval process they have to get into first, it looks like. And again, I have a lot of faith in the FDA. I think they, if anything, they go overboard on things. So let's see if. I know I was angry about the delay now, and as I said, I did not know why they would delay it, but there is a hopeful reason there. Dr. Yo, we will talk again soon, no doubt, and thank you for spending a little time with us.
Thank you, Dr. Drew. Thank you,
All right.
Susan. Kay, it was nice meeting you. I'll find you on social media.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch for sure.
She's
my
single.
friend.
Sounds good.
So let's do
Take
5
care.
minutes for Anthony Brown on homelessness. Anthony wrote a book. Did you see my interview with him? You might want to look it up.
Probably.
He
maybe.
booked from Park Bench to Park Avenue. He lived for decades on the streets himself, cocaine addict, trafficking drugs, and ended up in prison dozens and dozens of times. And because somebody sort of reached out to him, he started shifting, and now he's not only just a nurse, he's also a director of nursing at a psychiatric hospital. It's an
That's
amazing
so
story.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's something that's actually kind of normalized in Britain. Like, I don't know if I've talked about this before on the show, but that's essentially what my dad did, like with his career.
Which is?
Well, it started out, he ran this thing called the Motor Project, which was it's slightly different. So it's for young offenders, like adolescents, young people who have been involved in vehicular offenses. So like joyriding, like stealing cars, things like that. So instead of going to prison for those offenses, they would instead get sent to it's my dad and my uncle Roger ran this thing called the Motor Project, where you would get trained to be a mechanic, and I think they had a 0% recidivism rate.
Wow.
And then that got shut down because it was seen as being nice to bad people instead of like
Horrible.
taking people who had gone through awful things and showing them how to contribute in a way that would actually ultimately make them happy.
Well, Anthony is somebody who now treats it and who has gone through it. Who have worked with these populations for 30 years, I sort of see the fundamental problem. Since we last talked about homelessness, I've sort of distilled the whole thing down to one problem. It's impossible for healthcare providers to help people who need help. That's the bottom line. The laws prevent us from helping.
Well, the laws
Period.
in California especially.
They're insane. And so we have open air asylums, or you call them open air prisons?
Oh, I call them open air prisons, open air concentration camps, open air asylums. I think is probably one of the most accurate. But like Venice, right? Like I currently live on the west side. I'm desperately trying to move out of there because I can't. Like, I mean, it was fine when I could take my dog for a walk in the morning or take my dog out and wander with me, but even just in the last couple of days when I've like walked down to the shop, I've been followed home twice. And I think this is something that, like, it's been a year since we first started talking about this problem, this crisis, this genocide.
I was screaming about it for a year before I got you involved.
Yeah.
And I, unfortunately, because I just went to Washington to talk about it, that somehow made me something to somebody. And rather than me just trying to solve that problem, which I'm now going to try to get involved with Cory Booker. He says he's going to be involved in. I'll take anybody.
He does a lot of good youth programs. I've actually read a lot about the kind of success he's seen out on the East Coast with a lot of his youth programs.
And I was involved with Ben Carson, and I went to the federal government and gave a talk. But you're not allowed to. You're partisan if you do anything right now, which is insane when you're trying to save lives. Since we have talked, we've gone from losing 2 to 3 people a day to 4 people a day on the streets. And the magnitude of the problem has just gotten worse and worse and worse. And the laws, I talked to our new DA, this guy, forget his name right now. Susan helped me with the new DA. It's not like Gaspar.
It's Gascon,
yes.
You're asking me.
And he said he was sympathetic to this. He said, I hear what you're saying, and I'm willing to talk more like it.
He was one of the biggest proponents of the laws that made this a problem.
But I'm wondering if he, like me, is relieved to see that we're not putting people in prison for 3 cannabis offenses, right? Which was also insane.
Oh, yeah.
But that we're encouraging drug use and drug trafficking without any intervention now, which is what's horrible and killing people.
And it's normalized. Like, I think it's kind of terrifying to me, the number of young people who are disappearing off the streets as a result of getting wrapped up in gangs. Like, I can't remember, it might even have been you and I who talked about it, the number of bodies that were being found just like completely disintegrated, like either through like being murdered and then set on fire.
Oh, we were talking about that. What I was yelling about at the time was that a mountain lion had eaten somebody.
Yeah.
That's how what a mess we're talking about here. We're talking about people in an urban environment being eaten by mountain lions. That's how insane it's gotten here.
But you know what's crazy though is like a lot of people or a lot of the bodies that were found, it's actually now being traced back to gangs, to the cartel.
Yeah.
And it's, people are getting, it's not just like, I'm going to go be homeless in California and like live on the beach and like be in my van and do drugs and that'll be that for my life. It's, you're going to come here, but then you're also going to get wrapped up in some stuff that's going to cause more trauma than you're probably ever going to be able to overcome without an intervention like the type that I would imagine that you would give.
Well, here's what Anthony's saying. Changing laws is hard. It is, Anthony. The work needs to be done in hospitals, jails, streets, or in the treatment centers, pre-release to home. Well, Anthony, but your perspective, God bless you for that perspective, because you get to do that. How do I get you those people? That's the part, that's the block that I'm having trouble with. We need to be able to have, first of all, have 50 other places like your facility, and then we need to motivate people into them, whatever that means. Get them into these environments. I don't know how we do it, because the laws, the lack of understanding in Sacramento is just wild. We send families up there who beg for help in getting their loved ones home. They have money, they have resources, they have a bed for them, they have doctors, and they're told them to get the F out of there. Scram is what these families are told. So, yeah, Tony Walker, Newsom has a plan. Great.
Newsom doesn't have a plan. He has dinner plans.
Right, he has dinner plans.
The day that Gavin Newsom has a plan is, no.
He has said he has a plan for. He did do one thing. He brought out a bunch of trailers, but you can't get people into those trailers.
Yeah.
You can't put them in. This is the thing. That people are too sick to be willing to go even into those trailers. And once they're into the trailers, they die of drug addiction when they get in there. So it's not okay.
Yeah, all the trailers do is hide the crisis from the general public by about an inch. And these trailers, so I have a friend who actually lives opposite one of these they took over a car park in Venice, just down here, and put in a load of trailers. It was supposed to be the new shelter system. Yeah. In the first week, I think 2 senior citizens were murdered just from walking by. You're dealing with a hyper concentration of really traumatized people with severe mental health issues. And actually putting them in trailers is probably
might make things worse.
Yeah, I think
might make things worse. Not without people like Anthony and his team there helping.
More drugs and prostitution.
Patrick Coleman says, I predict Drew, you'll do the work. Cory Booker will sit back and watch. I don't care. See, I don't care. I hear he has a very smart chief of staff, and I don't care.
It doesn't matter who he works for.
I'll talk to Beelzebub. I'll tell you if Beelzebub can sit and watch. Well, yeah, we just need to fix this problem. I don't care.
Partisan
not partisan in any way. There's so much opportunity here for politicians to really sort of make a mark. There's something really can be done. They just need to listen to people who know how to handle this thing. But anyway,
how much are these issues? So I look at things from a macro perspective as a scientist. And so when I look at the homeless crisis, what I still see are young people from urban centers, but also rural parts of the United States who have had no real education. Let's be honest.
Not here.
I'm gonna be that chick and probably get in trouble for this. But when I look at how kids are taught, just these days, I had a parent say to me the other day, "Oh my gosh, my child is having to read and write in full sentences. They're only 6," and I'm like, "What the fuck? Your child can't do that already." That concerns me.
This is you and the Rough Riders in the British educational system. You
got
guys, by the time you're 9 or 10, you've read a lot of stuff. And you're speaking clearly.
Yeah, well, I was being published at 11, and that was I was one of the lowest achievers, I think, actually, in my network.
Interesting. I remember, just to tell you a quick story. I was in the National Gallery. I remember years ago, and I was walking by a 3rd grade class. They were 9-year-olds, and I, they were touring around, and I thought, oh yeah, they're going to be punching each other and not listening to stuff. And the conversation I heard the 9-year-old, 10-year-olds having blew my mind. They were standing in front of a Turner painting going, "Do you know, yes, he's much like Constable, and Constable, I sort of prefer him." And I was like, oh my God.
Turner is incredible.
I was like, what?
Drew, come back in the frame, okay?
And I thought this is. And I thought, oh yeah, that's right. That's the British education system, you guys.
Well, this is another reason why I can't get anyone to love me long term, is because I'm the person who walks into the shop and I'm I walked into a bookshop not so long ago. Actually, I guess it was a while ago because they were still open, and there was music playing. I was like, oh, it's Chopin. And then as I said it, I was like, shut the fuck up, hey, you pretentious fucking fuck. Don't be that bitch.
Hey,
just
the person who asked this question at the very beginning of the show, I don't think is here anymore. Okay. But since we're kind of talking about depressing stuff, okay, I kind of feel like we shouldn't have missed this question.
Okay, let's do it. I've lived with a loved one who is suffering from PTSD, anxiety, OCD because of COVID. We have not gone anywhere, friends, family, any stores since March. Oh boy, she can't work because of her diagnosis. I feel like there's nothing to live for anymore.
You're out of the...
Oh my God, that's awful.
I know.
So keep this, because we should frame this. Yeah. This is what the public health officials have done to thousands and thousands of people.
Millions, I think, at this point.
It may be millions, but this is what they have done with complete disregard for the suffering of people that have this. So we have someone who's already got PTSD, who feels now hopeless and helpless and out of control, which is horrible. It exacerbates PTSD, of course. Then you're living with somebody with PTSD and you get depressed. Please get medical care. Get medical care. This is not about COVID anymore. This is the time for medical intervention. Now, whether you can get it because she won't leave the house and, go Zoom online, meet with somebody, use what are some Better Care? Is that what the online services? But get some sort of connection going. Don't just sit with this. This is the problem. And certainly don't reach for substances, because that's what people tend to do when they're feeling like this. And that does not make things better. It makes things worse. Thank you for that. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And you're not being considered when they make these decisions these days, and you're not alone either.
Well, that's another reason why
SAMHSA has a crisis hotline. Terry Kaufman is saying that's right. This is substance abuse mental health services administration, SAMHSA, SAMSHA, has a crisis line. Try that.
Oh, and their crisis line is actually really good. I've had a few clients.
SAMSHA?
It's capital letters, SAMSHA, SAMHSA crisis line.
Yeah,
it's actually a good line.
SA, not SHA?
SHA. SAMSHA.
You say things so fast, I can't even pick it up.
SAMSHA. Six letters. All right, you guys, we're going in on 2 hours here. So
wow.
Yeah, it's gone fast, hasn't it? Yeah. And we appreciate you guys. Yes, telemedicine, crazy mook. That's what I was saying when I said Zoom.
I mean,
and Zoom is not like being in person. You're right, telemedicine is, but it's something. It's something to get this thing going. And by the way, that's one of the good outcomes of COVID, is that we are doing telemedicine across state lines, and that's important.
And
Speaking of Zoom, we're gonna have a Zoom party tomorrow with our locals fans.
There it is.
There
With
it
Mike
is.
Catherwood. Mike will be in here and bring a bunch of Zoom folks and see where it goes.
I think you should come on too, Kay.
I'm down. I'll come in.
Mike Catherwood is willing to come on and keep everybody entertained. But
Oh,
you
but
guys
the problem is, first of all, I don't want to subject Kay to that necessarily, number one. And number two.
Why should I be the only one?
And number two, if she so much as giggles at some of his stuff,
It's a nervous
it
giggle.
keeps him going. It keeps him going.
Listen.
When women giggle at his stuff, he just rolls. And I always like, why are you laughing? It's just
Let's just put it this way: there will be
laugh at
some
his
sex
stuff.
talk going on.
Well, there was one guy who came on a show that I did here. I couldn't even tell you his name.
It was
It might
probably
even
Mike.
be a character of his.
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
even know.
Oh, you were
Rudy,
on with Rudy.
Rudy,
Yeah,
the Mexican guy. Yeah.
fucking
Rudy.
genius.
Yes, it is.
You were on with
Fo-
Rudy. You got
yeah.
to be on with Rudy.
I followed him on Instagram. I still laugh at his shit now. I love all that stuff. I think
Well, you
it's
can come
so
on. You can
dark.
come on
I
tomorrow.
love it.
Yeah, I know. We need a little light before
All right.
the holiday.
All right, we'll do that. We will do that. But you've all been very kindly
I
attentive.
think our Zoomers really appreciate something lighthearted once in a while, because you guys. And then also on Tuesday I don't have anybody booked yet.
Maybe we'll
but-
just do a little chat.
Yeah, we'll just chat with everybody, and then on Wednesday we have Ask Dr. Drew with Jason Ellis. My tech guy is being a butt, and he won't make me a banner, but
Oh, that's good
he
enough.
produces it. Caleb Nation, you know who you are. But Jason had a heart attack, and we haven't talked to him since the last time he was on Ask Dr. Drew. He talked about.
He had atrial fibrillation.
Oh, he had. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know what he had, but he was in the hospital. It was very scary for Mike as well. You know, Mike is on the Jason Ellis show as well, so we can talk to him tomorrow. And yeah, I look forward to talking to him. He actually responded to me really quickly, like UK.
Oh, well, it's funny. I think I've met we have so many friends in common anyway. And then I've met so many people as a
Yes.
result of you.
Yes.
It's like, I'm finally finding my community in this godless fucking
Tom
town.
Green responded to me. I was going to try to get him on because somebody on the Restream was like, you got to talk to Tom Green. He's losing his, you know what? And I said, so I texted him. He goes, I'm on the road. I'm filming and I'm doing podcasts. He's driving across
Yeah.
the country in a van or something.
Right. He's in sort of a
And I
COVID
said,
very
well,
cool.
any any day at 3:00 you can do it. Of course, he hasn't gotten back to me. So
He'll get
Susan,
back to you.
I'll help with booking. If you guys ever need guests, I have this party trick where I can get anyone to respond to me. The only person who literally I have tried every single way to interview and he hasn't gotten back to me is Hassan Piker. So maybe if I give a shout out on...
I want a
Yeah.
booker. I do need a booker because I do a lot around here. I produce, I engineer, I edit, I run a corporation, I do the finances, I refinance the house. I have great sex with my husband, and I need somebody to book a fucking doctor once in a while. That
She threw that in there just so she could point out that if that's going to continue, I need some help here. That's what there's. I
Sensible
speak fluent Susan Pinsky. So.
No, and I don't mind paying for a booker, because a lot of times people go, yeah, you should get this guy on, and it's like they're in England.
Oh, here's a good one. This is a good point. Joseph asked us to get John Campbell on.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
going to hit him.
John
And Joe,
Campbell.
I sent an email to Dr. Campbell and no response, but I'm going to stick K on him and we'll see if that works.
I'm just going to spam him on social
Well,
media. I'll be like, "Put my fucking friend fucking come on my
He's
show."
like Dr. Drew who? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think it's better if
Fucking
you
English
have
people.
if you can send an email that's in really good and you have great English skills, which I don't. I don't write great emails. I can, but I don't like to. But if you have, if you're good at booking, if you're like a PR person and you're pushing Dr. Drew, it helps. I have people, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's
too
one of
lazy.
those things where it's like you have to go and
we can pretty much get anybody if we try
Yeah.
hard enough. But I want to get great people for our audience because I know they mean it.
My
right.
neighbor actually from back in Wales would be a good one.
Ooh.
Big shout out to Dr. Stephen Bassett. He's a doctor and a barrister because he
Ooh.
got bored and became a barrister.
Interesting.
Brilliant man. He ran out of hours for Wales, I think, for a long time. But like another physician, I think would be. He probably knows Dr. Campbell, so that'll be my.
Oh, that would be
That'll
good.
be my.
You're
in.
open your door.
Well, Campbell's a nurse. Everyone just calls him a doctor. I think he may be a PhD or something, but he's a nurse and he's a nurse educator. He's a very smart dude and very.
and he,
If you're looking to
Clear.
get your nursing PhD, I can do that for you.
he's probably like, I don't want to be on some damn show. And
See, this is John Campbell here. This is him. This old
Oh, he looks like every single actually my physics teacher, who was probably my favorite teacher.
looks like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
So
looks
if you
like a
want to
teacher,
get
doesn't
on the Zoom show tomorrow with Mike
Okay.
Cathwoods, go to
Yes.
drdrew.locals.com, and you have to be a subscriber. You
he?
can,
Oh, and the mugs, Susan.
Get the
People are
link.
asking about the mugs.
all right, show them the bug. There's the mug.
It's
Okay.
this littler one.
This one?
Yeah. Right? It's that one
I
you're
got dose of Dr. Drew mugs here.
okay. So she's gonna.
I don't know. We got to figure this out.
How do you want to do that?
Let's talk about it tomorrow.
So
I just got a
my
bunch of mugs,
QVC.
but I have
Yeah.
to.
It's
I
good.
don't know. I have to decide.
We don't know how we're gonna send them out and how we're gonna manage it. So
Show
maybe
him the one with Steve on it that I got for him because he asked for one. That's the Ask Dr. Drew with Steve on
So
it.
Susan's becoming this mug specialist. So you can. I think.
No, I'm giving Steve-O that for Christmas.
No,
for
but I'm
being
wondering
on
is
the show.
where should they send their recommendations and requests, to locals or somewhere else?
No, we'll figure it out tomorrow. Let me get my California pizza and then we'll talk about it. Maybe you guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're close to 2 hours here. We've done a great job, and we appreciate
I know, you
Kay. We
guys
appreciate
are
Dr. Yo, Susan.
hot
Thank you for having me.
Susan, we did it without any technical stuff. It was great.
I know.
No
we made
aliens,
it.
No ghosts, no spirits.
I might play one more ad and then I'm gonna. If you guys can chat among yourself, you're welcome to stay on the restream.
Okay, but I gotta pee, and so we gotta go. I am heading for the door, and 2 hours after a giant cup of coffee is about my limit. I don't have a prostate anymore, everybody. I had prostate cancer. They took that away from me, but I
Yeah.
still have a bladder, so it has a
You
limited
can still
capacity.
pee on me.
It's just like Billions. I knew it.
Or like
And thank you,
Robert
Kay.
Paul Champagne.
You can find Kay at ksmythe.com.
Yeah, and we will see you all tomorrow for the big chat.
Okay. And here's a recovery.
Oh,
ad.
Simone Mangianta's in there.
Oh,
Simona's in there.
Oh, wait, where?
Simona, she's in the chat. She just appeared.
We gave you some
Simona,
free shout-outs
yeah, we talked about you yesterday,
Simona,
Simona.
you should come
Brilliant
on. You can come
woman.
on the Zoom meeting tomorrow. We'll get you on there.
Yeah, so Simona Mangiante,
I'll
who
send her the link.
I have quipped and teased her that if I were going to cast a Russian spy in a film, she would absolutely be it.
All right, we'll get
So
Simona.
brilliant.
Let Simona run run the show with Mike Catherwood tomorrow. That might be fun.
Oh,
Maybe
those two together. Yeah, I'm
I'm
so down.
afraid.
I'm
I'm afraid. So,
See, I'm going to have backup here. It won't just be me laughing at his bad jokes. But
Simona, George is good. Yes. I hope you guys are okay.
George can come on too.
The last time you said that, it ended up being Andy, Tom.
Yeah, that was not good.
And
I'm not calling those guys.
thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, here's a speaking of Andy Dick, here's an ad.
According to SAMHSA's National Survey on Drug Use and Health, approximately 20.3 million people above the age 12 suffer from substance use disorder. Incredible. The disease of addiction takes an average of 130 Americans every day. Sadly, the opioid crisis, which many consider the worst pandemic of our time, has been even further perpetuated by the spread of COVID-19. Since the start of the coronavirus outbreak, drug overdoses have increased by 18%. Factors like economic stress and social isolation have led to increased depression and unnecessary deaths. A Better Life Recovery is a premier addiction treatment center in Southern California, offering one of the most highly regarded and comprehensive addiction treatment programs in the United States. Dedicated to helping its clients achieve complete inner and outer transformation, they offer a 45 to 90-day program custom tailored to meet the needs of each individual client. Long-term is the way to go. Many of A Better Life's clients elect to stay up to 9 months to receive additional support. A Better Life Recovery will do whatever it takes for as long as it takes to ensure the success of every client. Are you ready for a better life? Go to abetterliferecovery.com or call 866-581-4401 now.